Australia suffered their first defeat in 31 matches at Brentford Community Stadium, losing to the Matildas 2-0. Sam Kerr and Charlotte Grant, the goal scorers. For more on this, we welcome into the show Alexis Nunes. She was actually in Brentford for this game. Alexis, what happened? England are co-favorites to win the tournament later this summer along with the United States. Certainly didn't look the part.
Yeah, Sebi, honestly, you say co-favorites, and I actually have England as favorites because, let's be honest, as you mentioned, 30 games unbeaten up until this point. That spans over about almost 2 years right now under Sarina Wiegman. There's no secret that the European champions are absolute favorites to win this tournament. I thought that they surpassed their two toughest tests in the last two international breaks, one beating the US women's national team, and then in the finalissima up against Brazil, who came out in the second half, absolutely pushed them, took them to penalties. They held their nerve and won penalties. So we thought, you know what, against the Matildas, all due respect, of course, to Australia, we know that the women's program there is quite strong, but England should have this. But no, Australia made it difficult for them. They absolutely disrupted their way of playing, but England themselves looked a bit lackluster, a bit slow on the ball. They didn't have the usual pace that they have. In defense, they weren't as sharp. They are definitely missing the likes of Millie Bright, who is a top defender. She's kind of like an old school defender that our Stevie Nicol will be proud of. She's not one to shy away from those old school tackles. She's not about trying to play out from the back and be a Trent Alexander-Arnold. And they really were missing that. But you know what? Sarina Wiegman, who is the manager of the Lionesses, as well as the captain, Leah Williamson, spoke after the match. And they actually said they don't know why they played so poorly tonight. It's something that is actually going to take them a couple of days to look back, to assess properly, because this is foreign territory for the Lionesses. As we mentioned, they have been unbeaten, but Australia, I think, gave people now a blueprint of how to frustrate England, how to slow them down, how to take the game away from them. And now England have a lot to think about. But you know what they say? Sarina Wiegman said it after that. They're not going to worry about this too much because you do learn more from losses than you do from wins ahead of a World Cup against the host nation as well, one of the co-hosting nations, Australia up against as well with New Zealand. I think this is going to be an interesting one that England will definitely learn from, but I don't think it's panic stations just yet.
Alexis, it's the first loss for England under Sarina Wiegman, and it comes at the hands of Australia, who, of course, as you mentioned, they are co-hosts later this summer. What was your big takeaway from their performance?
Do you know what? Just the absolute guts that Australia went out there to play with. You know what? We got to sit down with the Matildas just last week and got to speak to them. I got to speak to the head coach, Tony Goodstaffson, and he spoke about the pressure that they were feeling being co-hosts of this World Cup. And he said, honestly, I was just happy to get the Matildas to the World Cup to be able to compete, and now he feels that they can do that. He said that his style of play is to just go out there and play attacking football, positive football, and he says, I understand that we're going to concede a lot of goals, but no matter how many goals we concede, I'm going to go out there and try to outscore that opposition. And today, the fact that Australia weren't really that tested in their defense up against England, the European champions, really says a lot. I think this is a massive confidence boost for the Matildas to kind of let their fans in Australia know that, you know what, they're not just here to be the happy co-hosting nations, just happy to be here, show you a good time. They're here to compete. And, you know, when I spoke to him, he said, making it to the quarterfinals, maybe the semifinals will be great for us. But I think if Australia keep playing like this and relying on the absolute brilliance that is Sam Kerr, I think, you know, that they deservedly should start dreaming a lot better, because this is a huge win for them. The fact that they came to beat the European champions in the backyard definitely says a lot and will give them a lot going into the World Cup.
Australia never made it past the quarterfinals in the World Cup. Will this be the year on home soil? Certainly would be a great story. Alexis, we mentioned it's 100 days to the start of the World Cup. You're going to be in Australia and New Zealand covering this. And, of course, the U.S., there as we see them, right up with England as the co-favorites in this tournament. They play tonight against Ireland. You're going to be covering the American team later this summer. What are you looking forward to seeing the most when they hit the field tonight against the Irish?
Do you know, honestly, Sebi, I'm looking for the real U.S. women's national team to finally stand up. As they say, the real Slim Shady to please stand up. We want to see that women's world champion team stand up, because as I said, I live here. I'm over in the UK right now, living in London. As I said, I cover the Australian team. We cover the Lionesses in depth. Got to speak to the likes of Kira Walsh and Alessia Russo, who are absolute stars for the Lionesses, and a couple of the Australian members. And all of them have noticed, and I say this lightly because they still did say that the US women's national team will forever be the team to beat. They are the ones that are the measuring stick, but they have noticed that there are more weaknesses than usual. They understand that they're going through transitions. They understand that they have had to deal without some pretty big players and big name players. We spoke about Julie Ertz as well, and just what she's added to that team, and how even her coming back now is probably not the 100% form of her that we're used to seeing, and how other teams now are sniffing that there may be some blood in the water, and to be that the US, I don't want to say that they're there for the taking, but that's what other teams are sensing. And I think that tonight, after the last match against Ireland, we do want to see a more dominant USA. We want to see a USA that definitely goes out there and reminds everyone that even though they are going through a transitional time right now, they still are the world champions. They still are the team to beat at this World Cup, and kind of remind everyone that, because as I said, having spoken to the Lionesses and the Matildas in the last 2 weeks, they do sense a couple of cracks in that armor. And after what we have just seen in these last 2 matches, there's no doubt that these teams will be going for them. They're used to coming up against the teams, at least in this side of the world, in Europe. And if you look at the FIFA rankings, the USA is the only team in the top 5 that is outside of Europe and the UK. So I think a lot of teams are coming for the US for this World Cup. And I think tonight against Ireland, it will be a perfect chance to remind everyone else that, we're still the world champions.
Not just the world champions, the 2-time defending world champions are the U.S. women's national team. There she is, Alexis Nunes. Alexis, great to have you with us here on ESPN FC. As always, thank you for the time.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.